My parents funded my brother's debts while publicly shaming me for asking help with rent. Now he's in jail, and they're blaming me for abandoning family. You could have saved him, my mom cried, as if I hadn't begged for help too once. I, 34 female, have always been the responsible one. My younger brother Camden, 31 male, has always been the lost cause, though our parents would never admit it like that. I've worked my whole life to get to where I am. I've made it through college, grad school, and years of freelance and office work. I've never expected handouts. But the one time I asked for help, I was humiliated. Camden has been bailed out more times than I can count, financially, emotionally, socially. And now he's in prison for fraud. But somehow, I'm the one being blamed for not saving him. Growing up in Spokane, Washington, things weren't dramatic. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't struggling. My dad worked as a mechanical engineer for a firm that handled HVAC systems in commercial buildings, and my mom taught English at a nearby community college. Pretty regular stuff. I was the older child by 3 years. I kept to myself mostly. I was a library kind of kid. I liked books, structure, and safety. I did my homework. Got good grades. Played piano because I liked the predictability of it. I was the child they didn't have to worry about. Camden was different. He was the type to burn ants with a magnifying glass and then cry when one bit him. He had charm when he needed it, he could make teachers laugh even after not doing his assignments. My parents always said he was a free spirit and needed time to find his path. That time lasted decades. In high school, he barely graduated. In college, he dropped out within a semester. Then came the jobs, retail, warehouses, bartending, all short-lived. He always had an excuse. The manager hated me. It was underpaid. I need to be doing something meaningful. When I graduated from Portland State with my MFA, I moved to Portland permanently. Rent was expensive even then, but I was determined to make it. I worked a 9-to-5 job at a logistics company downtown while freelancing on nights and weekends. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Most months, anyway. In 2017, rent increased suddenly. My landlord at the time hiked it up by $250 without much notice. I had just gone through a dental emergency, my freelance contracts were slower than usual, and I was staring at an overdraft fee that made me feel like a child again. Swallowing my pride, I texted my mom. "Hey mom, could I get a little help with rent this month? Just something to get me through. I'll pay it back." Silence. 4 hours. I thought maybe she was busy. The next day, I got a text from my dad instead. "We raised you to be independent. You're not a teenager anymore, Lacey." It felt like I'd been slapped. I stared at the message for 10 minutes. I wasn't even asking for much. Maybe $200 or $300. It wasn't a shopping spree. It wasn't laziness. It was rented. I didn't reply. I didn't have the energy to argue. That same week, I found out through Camden's Instagram, of all places, that my parents had helped him launch a new business. He'd convinced them he wanted to start a mobile car detailing company and needed startup capital. They gave him $7,000. I knew it wouldn't last. Camden had as much business sense as a goldfish. 2 months later, the business failed. The van was sold off. My dad joked at dinner that it was a good learning experience. They laughed. I sat there in silence. Then Thanksgiving came. That year, I tried to be honest. We were at the dinner table, the kind with the wobbly leg in my parents' dated dining room. The room smelled like turkey and cloves. I said, carefully, that I might need to move back in for a few months. Just to catch up. I could help around the house. Pay rent if they wanted. Just until I could find something cheaper. Mom's fork paused midair. "You want to move back? At your age?" Dad didn't look up from his plate. "We think you're better than that." Camden, dressed in a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly groceries, looked at me and chuckled. "You're just not trying hard enough. You could do Uber or something. Or sell your art." That was his idea of advice. I left before dessert. From that moment on, I stopped sharing. I kept my struggles to myself. I found a cheaper studio after couchsurfing for a few weeks. I changed jobs. I rebuilt slowly. But I distanced myself from my family emotionally. I couldn't bear the double standard anymore. Meanwhile, Camden bounced from idea to idea. At one point he was into cryptocurrency. Then dropshipping. Then NFTs. Each time, he went all in. He borrowed from mom and dad constantly. I heard through family friends that they co-signed on his car. Paid his traffic tickets. Even helped him lease an apartment in Seattle. He moved there briefly, claiming it was the tech capital of the West. It was only a matter of time before it all blew up. Last year, I got a call from an old high school friend who'd become a reporter for a local newspaper. She said, "I think your brother's in trouble." Camden had been named in a fraud investigation involving a fake real estate investment scheme targeting elderly people. He and a few other guys had convinced retirees to invest in fake property developments. Hundreds of thousands of dollars vanished. When the arrest came, I wasn't shocked. I felt numb. What shocked me was what happened next. My parents called me in tears. Not to apologize. Not to admit they were wrong. Not to say I'd been right all along. They asked me if I could come home. To help them. To help him. Mom said, "He's lost, Lacey. He needs his sister." I almost laughed. "Where was he when I was sleeping on a friend's couch?" I asked. "Where were you?" "Lacey," Mom sobbed, "you could have saved him." That broke me. Not because I believed her, but because I used to. I used to think maybe if I'd tried harder, said something at the right time, played the part of the perfect sister, maybe things would have turned out differently. But I realized something that day. Camden didn't need saving. He needed accountability. And they had never, ever given him that. After Camden was arrested, everything felt surreal for a while. The news ran his mugshot, hair longer than I remembered, eyes sunken, that smug charm wiped clean. The charges were serious: wire fraud, conspiracy, elderly exploitation. A local station even ran a segment on the victims. I watched it from my couch, blanket over my knees, unable to breathe properly. One woman cried while describing how she gave him her retirement savings. Another said she hadn't eaten out in months because she had nothing left. I sat there thinking, he did that. My brother did that. And my parents still want me to play big sister? After the news broke, I expected my parents to go quiet from shame. They didn't. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mother. "Lacey, this is a family crisis. I need you to call me. Your brother is scared. He's confused. This isn't all his fault." Not all his fault? It took every ounce of control not to throw my phone. Over the next 2 weeks, I got texts and calls from both parents, from blocked numbers, from Camden's girlfriend at the time, Michaela, who I'd only met once at a barbecue where she drank 2 bottles of rose and called me the stiff one. She said Camden wanted to talk to me. That he was owning up to stuff. That he missed me. The nerve. I ignored all of it until one night I finally picked up a call from my dad. I don't know why. Maybe I thought he'd be different. "Lacey," he said quietly, "your mom hasn't been eating. She's sick with worry." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied flatly. "Camden, he didn't mean to hurt anyone. He got in too deep. He's scared. We're scared. Please, if you just visit him, even once." I remember standing in the hallway of my apartment, hands trembling, a bowl of half-microwaved soup forgotten on the counter behind me. I asked him one question. "Do you remember when I asked you for $200? There was silence on the line. I continued, my voice level but my chest on fire. "I asked for help. For rent. I was 1 month away from sleeping in my car. You told me to be independent. But Camden scams strangers out of hundreds of thousands and you want me to comfort him?" Dad sighed. "It's different." "Yeah," I said. "It always has been." Then I hung up. A week later, Camden was formally indicted. He pleaded not guilty at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers, forged emails, fake documents with his name on them. Eventually, he accepted a plea deal. 7 years in federal prison. Minimum 5 with good behavior. The day the sentence was announced, my phone exploded. My mother left me 7 voicemails over the course of the afternoon, each one more frantic than the last. In one of them, she sobbed so hard I could barely understand her. You could have saved him, she cried. He wouldn't have done this if he had his sister. You abandoned him. You abandoned us. And that's when I cracked. Because deep down, some part of me still thought maybe I had failed him. I was older. Maybe if I'd guided him. Maybe if I'd stuck around. Maybe if I'd swallowed my pride at Thanksgiving that year, moved back home, tried to fix things. But all those maybes? They weren't real. They were the illusions my family had fed me for years. I wasn't Camden's keeper. I wasn't the safety net for his destruction. Still, the guilt clung to me like mold. Quiet. Sticky. Unrelenting. That night I sat on my apartment floor, crying harder than I had in years. Nico, my cat, curled up next to me, sensing the unraveling. The months that followed were a strange blur. My parents withdrew a bit after Camden's sentencing. Maybe it was embarrassment, or maybe they were hoping I'd cool off and crawl back. But I didn't. I kept my distance. I stopped replying to texts immediately. I started setting boundaries. When Mom asked if I would help pay for Camden's lawyer bills, because we know you're doing okay now, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Then I said, no. And don't ask me again. They were stunned. In some twisted way, I think they assumed I'd always be available. The strong one. The reliable one. The one who'd show up even after being ignored, dismissed, guilt-tripped. They didn't understand that when I said no, it wasn't an invitation for negotiation. They tried other tactics after that. Emotional appeals. Bible verses. Photos from childhood. Mom sent one of us to the park when I was 10 and Camden was 7, him clutching my hand and grinning with that goofy missing tooth smile. She captioned it, "You've always been his protector." That broke me in a different way. Because yeah, I had been. When we were kids, I looked out for him. I used to tie his shoelaces and cover for him when he forgot his homework. I used to share my candy. I used to give him my bed when he had nightmares. But I wasn't 10 anymore. And he wasn't 7. He was a grown man who had conned people, real people, out of their life savings. And my parents were still acting like he'd just skinned his knee and needed a band-aid. I didn't reply to that text. People always say blood is thicker than water. But that phrase isn't complete. The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." In other words, the bonds you choose can be stronger than the ones you're born into. And I'm starting to believe that more and more. It's not easy. There are days when I feel like I'm betraying them. Like I'm letting some moral duty rot in the sun. But then I remind myself, loyalty shouldn't be one-sided. Family shouldn't mean sacrificing your dignity to prop up someone else's dysfunction. And love? Love isn't unconditional if it only flows in one direction. A few months after Camden's sentencing, I started getting letters from him. Handwritten. Sloppy penmanship like he was rushing through thoughts. The first one was 6 pages, rambling between apology, self-pity, and odd requests, things like could I send him some books, or money for the commissary, or just check in with Mom because she's not doing great. I didn't reply. He sent 3 more over the next few weeks. One of them opened with, "I know I screwed up, but it's not like I killed anyone." That line made my stomach twist. There was no acknowledgement of the people he'd hurt. No accountability. Just a thin, half-hearted kind of guilt. It felt performative, like he was trying to say what he thought I wanted to hear while still keeping himself at the center of it all. I kept the letters in a drawer for a while, not sure why. Maybe part of me was waiting for the tone to change. Maybe I wanted to believe that deep down, the brother I used to tie shoelaces for was still in there somewhere. But the truth was, he wasn't. Around Thanksgiving that year, my parents invited me home. Not just for the holiday, but for what they called a family healing weekend. I already knew what it meant, another round of guilt sandwiches and subtle pleas for me to open my wallet or my heart. Still, I went. I don't even know why. Maybe I was hoping something would be different. Maybe part of me still needed closure. When I got there, the house was decorated exactly the same as it had been growing up. Same dusty garland. Same ceramic turkey on the side table. My childhood bedroom was still intact, eerily so, like a shrine to who I used to be, trophies on the shelf, old yearbooks, a faded poster of Monet's water lilies. Dinner was awkward. We ate in mostly silence, except for Mom's occasional passive-aggressive sighs and Dad's forced small talk about politics and the weather. Finally, after pie, Mom said, "We wrote Camden a letter. We think it'd be powerful if you added something to it. From your heart." I looked at her, fork in hand. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're his sister," she said. "Because he needs to know you haven't given up on him." I leaned back. Took a breath. Then said, "I have given up on him." They both froze. "I gave him up the same way you gave up on me when I asked for help and you told me to figure it out. The same way you treated me like I was selfish for needing you." Dad tried to interject, but I held up my hand. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "I'm just done being the backup parent. The emotional punching bag. The one you only call when something's broken." Mom's eyes welled up. "We did our best," I nodded. "Maybe you did. But your best wasn't good enough for me. And I finally accepted that." I got up, cleared my plate, and left early the next morning without saying goodbye. Now, here's where the revenge part comes in. No, I didn't destroy them. I didn't go scorched earth. But I did something much more satisfying. I started living for myself. I took every ounce of energy I had spent trying to earn their respect and invested it into myself. My art. My business. My peace. I launched a small illustration studio from my apartment, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the guts to try. I made stickers, prints, and did commissioned portraits. It was slow at first, but it grew. Within a year, I had over 40K followers on social media, a steady stream of clients, and enough income to leave my corporate job. It felt incredible. Then, I published a graphic memoir, a deeply personal zine about family estrangement, healing, and setting boundaries. I didn't name names, but the story was clear to anyone who knew. I sold out the first run in a week. A Portland bookstore asked me to do a reading. Local papers covered it. One even called it a haunting, quietly powerful meditation on emotional survival. I didn't send a copy to my parents. But I know they found out. You see, a cousin of mine, Amanda, who had grown increasingly fed up with our family's favoritism and dysfunction, came to the event. She posted about it online. And not long after, my mom sent me a text. "Is that what you think of us?" I stared at the message, smiling. "No," I replied. "It's what I know of you." She didn't reply. The final act? I bought a condo. Small, bright, perfect. My name on the deed. Paid for with my own money. No cosigners. No loans from family. Just me. When my parents found out, through Amanda again, they sent a card. Inside was a Hallmark pre-written message about how proud they were and how they always knew I'd do great things. I didn't reply. Because here's the thing, they don't get to reap the fruits of the tree they refuse to water. It's been over a year now since I last spoke to them. Camden's still in prison. Mom occasionally sends emails with updates, each one laced with just enough emotional bait to try and pull me back in. But I've stopped biting. I have friends who show up. Clients who respect me. A life that feels like mine. My home is quiet, cozy, peaceful, and for once, completely safe from chaos. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all, thriving in a life they never believed I could have without them. Let them sit with that. Let them wonder what might have happened if they had chosen the daughter who never asked for much, instead of enabling the son who took everything. I don't need an apology anymore. I don't need closure. I just need my peace. And now, finally, I have it.